it's Christina Feliciano with Feliciano and Friends. We have Alex, who is the owner of Quantum Human Performance, and he is a performance coach, a physician's assistant, and he's here just to talk about his business and how we can all really get help with being more mindful. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christina.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, and specifically, what does Quantum do?
So we're a full-service, holistic strategies approach towards performance. And so we work with athletes and high performers, entrepreneurs, to get them merging body, mind, and spirit.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
So give me an example. Who is somebody? Okay, so I'll use myself. How
Sure.
could you help me, for example?
Okay, so what we would do is we'd figure out what your pain points are.
Okay.
So if, let's say, stress is kind of the typical thing that
Yes,
most people are
I'm
encountering.
stressed
Right.
and anxiety.
Burnout is another one that
And
a lot
depression.
of people are experiencing. Okay.
Yeah, all of it.
And so we develop a strategy that would help ameliorate some of those concerns, the things
Okay.
that you're dealing with. Yeah, and the way that we do that is, like, I get started with the body first.
Okay.
And so what I normally would do is I'll lay out habits. Like, what sort of habits do you have? What are the things that you're doing? What are you doing to help any of the condition that you have? Like, let's say it is depression. So,
Okay.
are you doing any kind of meditation? Are you walking? What kind of foods are you eating?
Mm-hmm.
So we go through the body first, and then we go to the mind next.
Okay.
And so I've built out, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've built out a 24-week process, and it goes body first, then mind second. And it's kind of a didactic exchange. So we go through like a weekly book read
Okay.
that I've condensed into a video, and then we have a weekly meeting, and then there's daily installments that the client goes through that has what we call a quantum moment.
Okay.
And a quantum action to go along with it. So they have a daily action. It's about a 15-minute responsibility.
Okay. So from your point of view, and I'm inferring, you think that you basically get your body right and then the mind follows, because I believe that. So
And
yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree with
Yeah.
that. And the thing is that in most cases, most people kind of don't know where to start with the mind.
Yeah.
And so it's easy the entry point to be in the body, because most people can grip onto weight loss or something
Yes,
going on with
so-
depression, because usually depression, you've got some sort of issue going on with weight maybe. And so that's where we get started.
Yeah. So like I guess I'll talk about what I do, and then you can kind of explain a little bit maybe the science behind it, because I feel like when we've spoken, like I kind of do certain things, but you probably understand more. So I know for myself and for my patients that if you get your body right, then your mind kind of follows. And I know that what I recommend is to make sure, what I tell people is I recommend an hour of activity every single day, 7 days, really 5 days a week, treat it like a job, but up to 7 days a week. And I know that for myself, that when I do that almost puts all of my mental health things, at least at bay. Like I can,
Sure.
it subdues them, where I am pretty healthy as
Yeah.
long as I make sure that I'm doing an hour of physical activity a day, and that I'm eating well and I'm sleeping well. And if I do those things, and I also for myself that I stay involved in a church or just like spirituality. So those things, as long as I'm like every single day staying in spirituality, working out an hour a day, getting enough sleep, refraining from drugs and alcohol, then I'm okay. But I'm not quite sure why, the science behind why I'm okay, but I know that helps. And I know that if I'm able to help other people do that, I know that they have the same results that I do, that I'm not special. Like I don't have any sort of special powers or anything, but when I do that, I get really good results, and when I'm able to help other people. But why is it that when we do those things, do we feel so much better?
For starters, you're absolutely right. We're all human.
Yeah.
That's the common bond.
Yes.
Right? So physiology drives psychology. So
Okay.
that's exactly what you just got done saying. And there's some great research actually out of Stanford that talks about hope molecules.
I love this. I do.
Yes.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
I love the hope molecules.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
explain that.
And so whenever we contract muscle tissue, fascia in particular, you're releasing a lot of the toxins that are released from cellular metabolism when basically the cells are in use. And so the byproducts that they produce, number one toxin is carbon dioxide. And all of the cellular debris that occurs with it. And so whenever you squeeze and compress muscles, you're getting that stuff back into lymphatics and into circulation and out of the body.
Okay.
That's why movement is so crucial, right?
Okay. Yes. No.
And then having a good dietary experience where you're eating healthy foods, you're putting the right kind of components for the cells to operate properly.
Okay.
So then there's almost like a feedback mechanism that creates a good vibration in the body.
Okay.
That's maybe a good way of saying it.
Yes.
Where people are more uplifted, and so hence the hope molecule.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm familiar with the hope molecule. I always just explained it like, so we've talked about this. I explain things so rudimentary, but I'm like, if you basically break down muscle, it helps you be happier.
Yes, absolutely.
That's just like, and I'm like, it's science, it's been proven. Look, and then I always tell people, look it up. It's called the hope molecule. You can Google and learn more about it. But no, I'm familiar with it. And then let's also talk about what are ways that people, because I know that for myself and like a lot of patients, it's hard for people to make changes overnight. So what do you recommend for people to do if they're wanting to, let's say somebody doesn't have a job, they're overweight, and they're living at home, and they're tight on money and they want to change their life. Where would you start?
Yeah. So again, the sense of overwhelm becomes an issue with most people if you give them too much to do at once. And that's why I designed the process over 6 months.
Okay.
Because it's a slow adoption. So the first book that we review is Atomic Habits.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
I've heard of it. We've spoken. I've heard of it. I know, but please explain more.
yeah. So the concept in there is the aggregation of marginal gains. And it sounds like a fancy term, but basically it's small changes create atomic habits so long as you compound them over time.
Okay.
So the concept came about because I started working with athletes, and I was trying to help them. And with athletes, college athletes, I was working with Division I athletes, basketball players, and they can't take performance enhancing drugs or anything like that. Everything has to be natural. So I started with habits first, delineating what habits were good, what habits weren't.
Okay.
And then we started working on breath, and then we worked on sleep, and then nutrition, hydration in the end. And what I started to see is they adopted habits 1 week after the next, a new habit here, new habit there. The compounding effect turned performance like through the roof.
Okay.
It's crazy to see the one athlete that I worked with. He was probably 7th, 8th guy on the bench the year prior. And we worked that whole summer together, about 6 months. And the next year he was the second leading scorer on the team and team captain, team mentor. It's like he grew up, he wasn't just performing better, but he was just a better human.
All right. And when you're seeing small changes every week, can you give examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So simple things like if you're not going to the gym, you gave the example of somebody that's obese, home, they're not working. Put your shoes, your exercise clothes by the bed. So it's a reminder that that's what you want to do with your life. Get those things on. Even if you just walked 5 minutes, that's perfectly fine. The whole thing is to just keep doing it consistently because of neuroplasticity.
Okay, so talk more about the neuroplasticity.
Yeah, so neuroplasticity is the brain's rewiring. That's the beautiful part of being human because we can change. It's just we have to fight the resistance and the struggle of...
And why does the brain resist so much?
Because it's energetic. So it's an energetic cost, and it can't predict the future. It doesn't know what's coming next.
Okay, this is interesting. Explain more.
Yeah. And so because it doesn't know what's coming next, what ends up happening is it can't determine the future, so it's going to create resistant thoughts.
Okay.
Things like, oh, this is stupid, maybe I shouldn't do this, or oh, something might happen to me. And typically fear-provoking thoughts that it knows will prevent or create resistance in the person.
Okay.
But you got to push past that. And that's one of the things that we talk about, because I talk a lot about the mental dynamics of
Okay,
of
this
habit
is
change.
interesting. So and we've been talking with some other people, my friend MJ, just in business as far as overcoming fear. So am I correct in understanding that it's basically trying to push past and overcome fear?
Because it knows fearful thoughts will prevent us from doing. And so typically it's going to be fearful thoughts that rise.
Okay.
Yeah. So things like, oh, if I walk too much, maybe I'm going to hurt myself, or things like that will start to pop up. Or I'll never be I'll never be healthy. Anything that's going to create resistance from doing the activity, just because it can't predict the energetic cost of the activity.
So then the way to just move past it is just do it?
So that's the whole thing with fear, right? Fear in general. Fear is a protective survival mechanism. Nothing wrong with experiencing fear, but if you want change in your life, you've got to push past it.
Okay. So I guess the question is just, how do people push past it? Do you just tell them, like what I tell people is just, you do it despite your feelings.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you step into it. It's like, so I've had the great fortunes of working with the Florida Ballet.
Okay.
And
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, pre-performance anxiety is something that's experienced not just the ballet, but athletes experience it all the time.
Yeah.
But they have to step into it anyways, right? They've got no choice.
Yes.
So everybody gets pre-game jitters. Everybody gets the butterflies, but they step past it just because they know that that's what they want to do. That's what they truly want. That's what really matters to them.
Yeah.
And so that's probably one of the most crucial parts of this, because what we end up doing is teaching flow in the end, flow science and all this stuff. And there's a cycle. And this is one of the most interesting things that I probably talk about in recent times, is the flow cycle starts with struggle.
Okay.
Then it goes to release. Then it goes to flow, and then recover. So the struggle part is the uncomfortable feeling, which is why you hear it all the time now. People should step into discomfort.
Yes.
Because if you step into discomfort,
like, I'm always like, let's have hard conversations. That's my thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then if people can learn to just accept and embody that feeling, that feeling of unrest, the feeling of discomfort, and step into it, they'll enter into the flow state.
Okay. And how long does that take?
Doesn't take long. It's usually, they say anywhere between 5 and 15 minutes.
Oh, so this is what we're talking about,
past.
to push past. So this is why I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but with yoga, why is yoga so beneficial? Because I know when I do yoga, I'm like it feels so good. And then I like walk to the car and I'm like back in my thoughts. But explain to us the science behind why yoga is so life-changing and really helps the brain and the mind.
So yoga was I went through burnout. And so yoga was like my grounding movement pattern of choice, I would say. And the thing about yoga that I love is that it's not just physical movement. You do breath, you sit meditation, and you start to kind of merge body with mind. Because as you start to flow, you get lost in that movement, right? Because you want to do the movement right. You want to make sure that you're doing it right. And if you're cued the right way, you literally can just fall into it and lose your sense of self.
Okay.
Which is it.
Yes.
Like you're quieting the default mode network in the brain, which is all self-referential thinking. So it's all the thinking about yourself.
This is a little bit above me, but I'm saying
Well, it's all of us. It's all of us.
Okay.
We all have it.
Yeah.
And so some people, unfortunately, it gets larger with time, because anything that we practice grows in the brain. So anything that we do in life is represented in the brain by a brain network.
Okay.
And so when you do yoga, the tendency is that you fall into the movement patterns, the motor recruitment patterns, and you fall away from your thoughts of the days, the things, your responsibilities, things that you have to do, because it requires so much focus and attention
on what your physical body.
On what your physical body's doing, yeah.
So then with the breath work, is that what you're trying to teach people, is just to get really into their body so that they can just in the moment just sit and just be still?
So with breath, it's multifold, right?
Okay. Because I'm not as familiar with breath work.
So this is the beautiful part about breath work that I learned was the Framingham study. So you're familiar with it, right?
I am not.
The cardiovascular study has been going on for like 75 years plus.
I should be.
You're good.
Okay.
So in that study, they determined that the number one predictor of longevity from a holistic standpoint is full lung capacity.
Okay.
So if you can expand your lungs on a regular basis, you can actually grow the tissue, expand your diaphragm, and create more space.
So that's the number one thing for longevity?
The number one predictor of longevity is full lung capacity.
And you do that just by like breathing, not jogging?
Well,
I don't want to jog.
It's really engaging the diaphragm.
Okay.
When you engage the diaphragm, it's responsible for 70% of your breathing ability.
All right.
So the problem with most people nowadays is they're breathing through their mouth.
So explain this to me. Just walk me through it.
Absolutely.
Explain to me, what is deep breathing?
So when you breathe through your mouth, you're breathing into the upper lungs. So it creates almost like a sympathetic response, because you have sympathetic receptors in the apices of your lungs, the top part of the lungs.
Okay.
When you breathe down into the diaphragm, you're actually engaging the vagus nerve. So when you breathe deep through the nose, it forces the air, because of the small nasal passageways, it forces the air down deep into the lungs and pushes the diaphragm down and expands lung capacity. But it also triggers the vagus nerve to send a message to the brain that everything is safe in the environment.
Okay, so that's what they tell people to deep breathe when people are having a panic attack?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So breath work is multifactorial, because you're getting full lung capacity, but then on top of that, there's different types of breath work.
Okay.
Because
teach me.
There's very engaging type breath work. So things like Kapalabhati or skull shining breathing, which is like a rapid exhale. And you just do that over and over again.
Yeah.
And that engages your sympathetic nervous system and turns you on. So if you're feeling lethargic or a little tired, I recommend this all the time instead of afternoon coffee, which messes with nighttime sleep. So that's a great breathing pattern to do.
So I should be at my desk and go.
Not in, but out.
Oh. Like a horse?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you do it successively.
How long do I do that for?
So 20 reps, 3 sets. So
Until I'm going to
total.
pass out.
If it does start to get to the point where you start getting dizzy at all.
Yeah, I feel a little dizzy even just 3 or 4.
Then you just stop at 3 or 4. Because eventually you'll get to the point where it'll start. You get your carbon dioxide tolerance starts to get better.
Oh, is that what's going on? Okay. I have a low carbon dioxide tolerance right now.
Well, it's possible too because you've been running around.
Yeah, I have been running around all day. Well, that's interesting. So for people, let's talk about people that aren't athletes, because sometimes just like people that are listening maybe are not athletes. How can you with quantum change people's lives that are, let's say, maybe just a nurse or a businessman or a physician? I know we've talked about, you want to talk a little bit about burnout. If you can maybe talk about what burnout is, and if if there's any professionals watching this, how maybe you could help them with resistant of burnout.
Yeah, so burnout, so having had experienced it, I've always been people pleaser, take on anything, I can do everything, I'm capable, beyond, Incredible Hulk type stuff.
Yeah.
And I was working a full-time job, and as you know, in medicine, as a physician assistant, I was seeing, probably on average at the beginning of my career, when I started 25 years ago, 22 patients a day, and the last job I was, or not last job, but second to last job, I was seeing about 35 to 42 patients a day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And it was a lot. And then I had taken on working with my brother's team, and so I was doing that at night. And I was also in a relationship with someone that was 21 years younger than me. So
good for you.
Throw a bunch of stuff together, and I had just probably loaded my shoulders with way too much. And over time, I started to pull away from a lot of my friends, so became more isolated. Started to feel more depressed. I started to lose my joy for life, kind of almost like an emotional flatness.
Okay.
And sleep deprivation kicked in, where I was having insomnia. And I'd never in my life had insomnia.
Okay.
It was just, I had taken on too much, and I hadn't realized the toll it was taking on me and the people around me, because it was like I had become irritable, moody, and it was very unusual for me. But I was pushing through because I'm a grinder, I'm going to get it done. And so I see this a lot in society today, where people are just pushing past. Everybody's got a side hustle. Everybody's, doing something to try to make ends meet.
Me and Izzy.
And it's just
every day we're hustling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the majority of our population right now.
America. I am about it though, for real.
Yeah, and it's really, because this is an action-oriented experience, physical living. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And again, where do we derive our sense of value? Typically from the things that we do.
For sure. Yeah.
And so that's something that I've kind of shifted in my way of being since that time, because I realized my value doesn't come from the things I do. My value just comes because I live, because I'm, got this gift of life, and I've got this opportunity to live. And so there's nothing wrong with pursuing, but balance has kind of become more of a key in my life now. And so again,
So you don't think there's value in things you do?
No. That's what I said. There's definitely value in what you do, because you're going to assume value in the pursuit of what the chase, the things that we do. It makes you. It adds meaning to life.
Yes.
But I think sometimes we get caught up in almost an addictive way of pursuing, which is what my problem was. That I was just constantly trying to say yes to everything and everybody when I didn't have anything in my gas tank left.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was sleep deprivation.
That's awful.
Oh, it was terrible.
That can put you in a psychosis.
That's what happened, actually.
Yeah.
So I ended up in psychosis.
Okay.
So I started believing that there was a plot against my life. It was terrible. In reflection now, I'm I don't even know how I got there, because I've always had the sanest of minds. I've done triathlons, marathons.
That's tough.
Always been very active, and this was just something I didn't have. I didn't want to do anything. I felt completely lethargic. I was just down in the dumps. I did yoga every day. I was doing yoga 1.5 to 2
But was
hours
this
a day.
also during COVID where you're isolated?
So it was right after COVID.
Okay, so
during
yeah,
that
because
time.
isolation too is not good for mental health. It's really, really bad to be isolated.
Absolutely, because we need social bonding.
Yes.
It's oxytocin. So we release oxytocin. That's actually the most reparative hormone that we release.
Yes.
When we don't have social connection, we don't have any.
Okay.
And so, having starved in all of that and everything that happened, that psychosis landed me in the hospital. Like I ended up, everything stopped. Like the
Okay.
whole world stopped for me.
Yeah.
And I ended up at Memorial Hospital and had to go through the rehab of their inpatient program, inpatient mental program,
Yeah.
and then outpatient. So I did that for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, it was the wildest experience I think I've ever had in my life, but it was also the most nurturing experience because it was the first time I ever slowed down.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I mean I can kind of relate in that like I wasn't in a institution, but I was incarcerated for 18 months and that forced me to slow down. So that so when you did that and you had to be institutionalized for 6 weeks, when you came out, did you feel better?
Oh God, yeah. I would say this. So I ended up having I was hospitalized for 14 days.
Okay.
And probably by day 2, day 3, because of the rest and possibly some of the medicines they put me on, I was already starting to gain clarity again. By the time it ended, by the time I transitioned into the outpatient program at Memorial, I was much better. But there still was a lot of ruminant thinking, because what happens is at least in my case, is these ruminant thoughts, they don't just go away. And I know now with everything chemically that was going on, it was just like I was stuck in the stress cycle.
Yeah.
So excessive cortisol, adrenaline, and then there's this neuropeptide that I learned about called tachykinins.
Okay.
And tachykinins actually cause people to see things more threatening than they actually are. They make you feel like you're like you feel more aggression.
Is this kind of like putting someone like in a PTSD state?
Yes.
Okay.
And so
Because I just have some PTSD.
yeah, and so some of this chemistry causes neuroplasticity to occur a lot quicker.
Okay.
And so these neural patterns that are now newly developed are more ingrained, and so they're harder to release over time.
All right.
And so it took me a while to stop having these thoughts that people were out to get me. Like it was nuts. And so fortunately, I had about 3 months.
Yeah.
I got fired from my job,
Yeah.
which is crazy to me. But I had 3 months and I had some disability that I could take. And so I did that and then took another job.
So I
working
mean,
in
you
pain
really
management.
then can relate to people. So
Oh, God,
as
yeah.
far as so like with your business, you can be like, hey, if you feel like you're going crazy, I'm the guy.
There's no doubt.
Because so you know what it's like to not just to really have mental to feel not mentally well, and you know how to then get your brain from not mentally well to mentally well. So now you have your own business successfully and you're training elite athletes.
Yes.
So you should have started off with that. So that makes you very relatable. That makes people, so because at first when I didn't know all of this about you until you opened up, but like you come across just so like well versed and so smart that it makes it sometimes like you're not as relatable. But then when you hear, oh, like I went through a hard time and I went through a little psychosis and hospitalization, it's like, oh, you are relatable. You are one of us. And also that you're able to get, past it. So what do you do every day to stay healthy and be able to maintain your business and also be able to help others? What is like part of your daily routine?
So
And thank you for sharing that. I wasn't expecting that, but thank you. That was, yeah.
There's more to the story, but I mean, for time's sake, we'll keep it
Yeah.
there. So the things that I do, what I call my non-negotiables, is 8 hours of sleep.
Okay.
Like that one, I realized like that's the most important part because that's when we rejuvenate
Yes.
and we replenish all of the neurochemistry in the brain. And so the average American is sleeping 6.5 hours per night.
And explain again what's happening during sleep that's so good.
So sleep is, I mean, again, it's the fountain of youth for us. It's
Okay.
what keeps us.
I knew that.
It's what keeps
I
us.
love sleeping.
Yeah, that's what keeps us. So we have a system in the brain called the lymphatic system. And it's almost like the lymphatic system, but for the brain. What happens is the microglia overnight decrease in size, for the brain cells decrease in size about 300% so that cerebral spinal fluid can go in there and wash away the day's debris.
Okay.
So
So what should you be listening to, if anything, during sleep? How do you feel about sleep?
Actually, yeah.
Nothing?
I'm not big on that.
Okay. I listen to sometimes like the sleep hypnosis. It's like, you are going to be calm. You will be fine and happy.
Yeah.
Does that help? Because I've been telling people that it helps. Like, you should do that because it's going to get into your subconscious and you're going to believe that. Is that true?
Absolutely true.
Okay. Then.
Absolutely true.
What if you listen to Dateline?
No.
I sometimes do that too. Yeah. And the thing is, I know that I'm listening to it because I'll wake up because it'll be like a plot twist and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it was him. I thought it was her. Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is that,
it's one or the other, either Dateline or like positive affirmations.
So the beautiful part about the brain.
It's easier to fall asleep to Dateline though. But go on.
So the beautiful part about the brain is that it never shuts off.
Okay. Good and bad.
Consciously, we go out. So the part of us that's responsible for analyzing the world, basically ego, goes out.
Okay.
But the unconscious part of us, the part that we're not managing, which is the majority of our sensory experience, stays online. So if you have anything going on in the sound sense, then in essence your brain is receiving that, and so there's some changes in brain waves.
Okay.
And so that's the whole thing about sleep, is that sleep occurs in different stages. So the first stage, light sleep, is very close to almost like an alpha wave state where very meditative. But then as we go into deeper wave sleep, what happens with the rhythm of the brain is that it actually slows down and it synchronizes. So if you've got some sort of exterior stimulus, then it's going to impact that. And you may not fall into the deeper sleeps, which is where memory consolidation and brain health really occur.
Okay, that's interesting. So 8 hours of sleep, number one. What else do you do?
So 8 hours of sleep, morning breath work.
Okay.
Morning meditation and...
And how long is the breath work? How long do you do that for?
About 10 minutes.
Okay.
10 to 12 minutes. 12 minutes.
Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, so I'll have a cup of coffee from time to time, but I drink tea mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, green
Black tea?
mostly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Green tea. All right.
Yeah.
So sleep 8 hours, green tea, 10 minutes of breath work, and then what's the next thing you do?
Morning hyperhydration. So I wake up in the morning and I have 20 to 24 ounces of water with a pinch of Celtic sea salt.
Okay. So
the concept there is overnight we're flushing our whole body, and so we're getting rid of that morning.
What if it was sea salt from someplace else?
So Himalayan sea salt, they found a lot of BPA's and plastics in them. So that's the only reason
it's got to be
why
Celtic.
So Celtic or Redmond's sea salt. Either one of the two apparently are
But Himalayan is no good?
It's just that because it became such a market, people jump in.
The pink salt.
And you just,
we need the pink salt.
Right. And so like anything, people abuse that.
Yeah. All right. So the water, and you said cayenne pepper, or did I just imagine that?
No, the Celtic sea salt and just
okay, I just imagined that. Sorry.
So good.
And then 24 glasses of water, and then how long do you do yoga for? And what type of yoga do you do?
Yeah, so I go to Belvita at the beach, and so they've got a ton of offerings. I've gone to a bunch of different studios. Like I've been to Titanium, which I absolutely love.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing their instructor course. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So awesome.
The room is amazing. Yes. It is so peaceful there.
Talk about meditative.
Yeah, very much.
And then with it being hot, it's like,
yeah, no, it's really nice.
Yeah, I really enjoy that place. But Belvita's right down the street from my house. And I've grown to love the community there.
Oh, very cool.
And they offer a lot of different types of yoga. So it can be power, vinyasa. They've got hatha. They've got yin, which is the one that I probably had the hardest time with because you're sitting in a posture for 2 to 5 minutes.
Oh, I probably would like that. Is it a difficult posture or is it a relaxing one? So I like to sometimes sign up. If I'm in a lazy mood, I look for where it says in fine print, pregnant ladies can be in it. Because I know that's going to be a chilled one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a chilled yoga class. So. And then, so you do yoga every day, or how frequently do you do yoga?
So I've been doing yoga every day ever since my breakdown.
Okay.
But I'm getting to a point now where I want to get back in the gym because I haven't been going to the gym. I've been paying for membership, but I'm not going.
You're not doing. Yeah. Okay. And then what about diet? And so you're no drugs or alcohol? No. Okay. And then diet, how do you eat?
I say I'm not hard fast on alcohol because I feel like there are social events
for sure
and things where I'll have beer here or there. Like my old neighbor drinks beer all the time, and so we go fishing. I'm gonna have a beer.
No, for sure. I mean, for some people that's good.
But for me, it's more like I'll drink a beer and then I'll drink a whole water. So it's not like I'm ever getting to the point where
that does not sound fun. But
it's a whole lot of peeing going on.
All right. So you are daily doing. So pretty much, I think for people that are listening, what's very interesting is that like and this is just what I'm like inferring to kind of explain. And so you were successful, burnt out, then felt mentally pretty stressed out, but you've been able to successfully get your brain back healthy, doing things that pretty much people could do for free, but they probably need help because we need coaching. Because the brain is difficult to make changes, it's not like an overnight thing. So
Correct.
where I would tell people if they're listening why you would want to hire you, or why people sometimes with weight loss or testosterone, is I make people commit to either at least a 12-week program, 12 or 24 weeks. And then people will say, well, I can get it online. And I'm like, yeah, you could get it online, but what you're not getting online is you're not getting me. And online, like, so the things that you're saying anyone could do. So they could just listen to this podcast and they could go, you know what, I'm going to take 8 hours of sleep. I'm going to drink water in the morning. I'm going to do breath work. I'm going to do yoga, but it's probably not going to happen because that's a lot of things and that's a lifestyle. So what you need is someone like Alex, who is a coach that's going to be able to, in 24 weeks, walk you through and help you change your whole life for the better. So this isn't just for athletes, which the athletes, I want you to explain a little bit more why it is so good for athletes, but I think what you're really doing is really good for just the everyday person that's struggling with mental health. And I know for myself, being a nurse practitioner with tons of colleagues that are physicians, attorneys, businessmen, entrepreneur, what they're doing is they might not be getting into psychosis or going that far, but what they're doing is they're numbing it a lot with drugs and alcohol, which then causes all these social problems with their family, personal life, and then all these long-term bad, ailments. So even if it's not necessarily the severe mental health, they're even just the substitute of, drugs and alcohol. So I know for myself, I do these things because I don't like always the way that I feel, and these things help me, feel better without it. So what do you do specifically for athletes? So what do you do to help them?
So my work with athletes mainly started because they're a very disciplined group.
Okay.
And they're going to do the habits. But it's mainly to prove the system, because the system is for everybody. It's just a matter of getting people to adopt it based on somebody else actually having success with it.
Yes.
And so I want this for absolutely everybody, because where this all really got started for me was really interesting. I watched the show Social Dilemma.
Okay.
And that's why I targeted athletes first, because I feel like they're confronted with so much more than we were confronted as kids. Because I know we didn't have social media to deal with. We didn't have, we got to disconnect once we left school.
Right.
And it's like nowadays they never disconnect. And so it's like they're suffering with symptoms that are very similar to burnout type syndromes.
Oh, these young kids are?
Young kids are, because whenever you're scrolling, you're burning through dopamine. And so now you have less motivation, less focus. So that's why I think attention deficit disorder keeps rising.
Keeps on rising.
Much.
So which athletes do you work with now? I know you said you work with the ballerinas.
So I've got, it's crazy how it's starting to expand.
Yeah.
And it's happening so organically.
Okay, and the basketball. Tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm working with basketball, ballerinas, and golfers now.
Okay, very cool.
That just got added recently.
Okay, so golfing, ballerina, and basketball. But I know you said you thought that maybe even football, you can help football players.
So that's coming. So I haven't started yet, so that's why I didn't want to say it.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'll be starting with
put it out there, manifest it.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
So
June and July, I'll be working with a local school.
Okay, very cool. And so with the athletes, are you doing the same thing that you're talking about that you do, or do you add some different things for the athletes?
It's a little bit different with the athletes.
Okay. I want you to talk specifically. I think I might be jumping ahead, or correct me if I'm incorrect. But don't you do things with visualization with athletes?
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about the visualization, because everyone that knows me knows that I'm about manifestation visions. I have a strong Christian. I believe in Scripture is from God, and I believe that that we can derive from Scripture personally. So there's Scripture that talks about that a man without a vision perishes. So I have a belief that there's a lot of suicide and mental health issues in part because people do not have a vision for themselves for their future. So I'm very much hold that it's really important to have a vision, or you'll die. Right. So talk about the science and why having a vision is important and what it does. Like why having a vision, just in the short run with where you're playing a sport, or big picture, why that makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. So visualization was almost like woo-woo stuff, like back in the day, right?
Because
people, visualize, you're manifesting, all this stuff. But now there's hard science.
Okay, so what's the hard science behind it? Because I know that it works, but I'm like, it's God. But what's also, how's God using it or making the science happen?
Yeah. So there's something called the reticular activating system in the brain
Okay.
that is almost like the filter for what's incoming from the environment.
All right.
And so what it's designed to do is to pick up what it is, subtle cues in the environment that are aligned with what you want. So one of the first things I do with athletes or any of the people that I work with is, what are you looking to accomplish? What is your goal? What do you want to do?
Okay.
And then why do you want it?
All right.
Because
So
if
I'm
you-
just going to
Yep.
say it back so I'm understanding.
Sure.
So when you're doing visualization or manifestation, it's what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the second part?
And why do you want it?
And why do you want it?
Because you want to ground what you want with some form of emotion. Because when you put emotion behind something, you're putting neurochemistry behind it.
Okay. So I'll use myself as an example. I want to be financially free and I want my family back.
Mm-hmm.
So what do?
So you put that out just like that, and you put some passion behind it.
Okay.
And then what's going to end up happening is your reticular activating system will start finding cues in your environment that are going to align you with the things you need to do in order to get there.
Okay. So that's what I always explain to people is that I have this vision and that vision pulls me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
That's
kind
exactly
of
right.
okay?
Yeah, and
So-
nothing gets in the way. When you know
Exactly.
what you want, and you want it for the reasons of passion.
Yeah.
and
Like, I know for
if
sure,
you put
I
love
just-
behind it, like
That's what I always,
that's
we think we
number
were
one.
talking, yeah, but I feel like love always wins. Like, I think that, like, the
Always.
reason I know that I'm going to end up back with my family and back happy and back and have things is because I'm driven by love
Yeah,
for my family.
yeah.
And that no matter what, like, even when I want to give up, I'm like, I love those kids and they need me and they need me to keep going.
Like that's the whole thing, right? So fear is a major motivator for us, but love is a much more potent emotion. Like you know it when you fall in love.
Yeah.
Like everything else melts away. Like there's nothing there. Fear is one of those things that it can grip you, but if you learn to love yourself, one of the things you do is you realize fear is just a natural part of life. But love itself, like when you think about it, it's releasing, again, a surge of chemicals, oxytocin mainly, so the bonding chemical. And that one is, without a doubt, the most regenerative hormone of all. And so the more that we love what we do, which is what I tell my athletes to do, I say to them, bring love to what you do. And I always pull my shirt forward.
Yeah.
Because I want them to understand, don't fear or don't look at the mundane aspects of your sport like, oh, it's such a drag, because you're literally telling your brain you don't want to do it. And so in essence, your focus is going to probably not be as sharp.
Okay.
But when you love the mundane part of life, the simple things, like life becomes joyful, becomes full, becomes rich. And so to me, love is the most important part and component in life.
See, I have a little different view because I feel like life is really, really difficult and we have to push through, but the love like pulls us through.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what
Like,
you're, so what you're
so I
saying-
have like, like, so for example, with like the business, it's a grind. It's hard. It's not, Izzy's seen me for the last 2 years. What I do, it's difficult and it's hard day in, day out, but like I'm able to do it. Not, I guess it's like the overreaching thing is a love for my children, but like the daily, I don't know if it's love or if it is, or I don't know.
So what's interesting about that is, and this is one of the things that I talk to athletes about, is you can look at things in life like an obstacle, or you can look at it as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say to you is that
But
I got trapped. I
Yeah.
got trapped when I fell in psychosis and all that stuff. I got trapped in this concept that everything was happening to me. Like all these challenges were terrible, and there was no way I could ever get through it all.
yeah.
Where now I look at every challenge that I confronts me like it's a gift, like it's an opportunity for me to learn something new, to come with curiosity to it, as opposed to coming into it like, I don't want to do this.
Okay, that's interesting.
And it's just perception.
Yes.
Because it's the way that you view life. 'Cause
Yeah, perception
if
is
you
reality.
change-
Yeah.
If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Wayne Dyer said that.
Okay.
This guy, he's somebody that I absolutely love.
And what does he do?
Oh,
Or who is he?
He was a speaker like back in the 70s.
Okay.
And just awesome. Like he just got around and just spread the message of love and just hope and growth and just and a lot of God talk and stuff too.
So yeah, because where I come from, like a little bit different, where I'm like love, but I think that there's like good. Like this is another topic for probably another podcast, but I feel like we're like more like spiritual beings, and then we fight with like love and like darkness. And like I always do say, because I believe in scripture, that like light outshines the darkness. So, and there's like a saying, they talk about like the wolves. Have you heard about the
Good
dark,
wolf
the good wolf, and like the one that
the
wins.
Cherokee story.
Yeah, so exactly, and
So
the one that you feed, exactly.
So that's perception.
So
How we look at our life, that's the wolf we're feeding. So that's one of the stories that I share with athletes
Okay,
very regularly.
yeah.
Whenever they have problems, like particular ones that have problems with anger, frustration, or
Right.
anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I tell them, like, you're choosing it, but in the brain, how that's represented is it's a brain network. Anger is a brain network, just like love is a brain network. And so if you feed something, that brain network grows.
And how long does it take the mind to heal? So if somebody's doing this program and they're really like, let's say the yoga and the mindfulness and everything, how long does it take where it becomes not as difficult? Because I know we talked about at the beginning that it's going to be a part of your brain's going to be resistant. You're going to fear. And I know we were talking about it short term to kind of, meditate and get past it, but just in everyday things. How long does it take for the neuroplasticity to really have long-term changes in the brain?
So that's going to vary from person to person. And that's why I said when you put an emotion behind it, you can speed the process up.
Okay.
And so that's why it always takes somebody to hit rock bottom in order to make a drastic change in their life.
So why is that?
Because of the emotional component associated with the drop.
Yeah, I've noticed that like pain is a big motivator.
Huge motivator. Because it's going to release a ton of chemistry associated with the emotions you have with it. And just think of emotions like the paste to any thought, which creates the memory. So like with PTSD,
Okay.
if the emotional polarization's really high, then that's why people develop PTSD, is that there was a large emotional component, a surge of chemistry that wrote that into the brain, like almost like it etched it in.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's how it happens.
And then how long do you have to do it? Like, so
Sorry,
just at
you
least,
did ask
yeah.
that.
So just try to give like what's
so
the
like-
range? If
so
you're
like-
healthy, or if you, let's say you take a really long time versus a short time, what's the range?
So like habit adoption, that's probably a good
Okay.
way to kind of compare it. It can vary anywhere between 21 days to 253 days. It just depends on how committed you are to the process. And that's why I said at the very
Okay.
beginning.
Is that like about
that's-
11 months? Because I feel like I read about 11 months.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So
That's what I
the
tell
whole thing. It
people.
can be-
I tell
it
people
can be
11
that
months so they can just be prepared that it's
It
going to
can-
take a second.
And this is why I say if you dread doing the things that you do, it's going to probably happen.
And I think it takes
slower.
me years. I'm telling you, because I feel like I'm healthy, and then no, maybe not so much.
You look great.
Well, thank you, but I'm saying for my mind, like I feel like I'll be really like, even Izzy the last couple of days, I've been having some feisty thoughts. I've been talking to Izzy, and she's like, "No, don't do that. Just peace, just send, just." I'm like, I just feel a little froggy,
So
but
there was a
very froggy.
There's a neuroscientist by the name of Shauna Shapiro, and she has a TED Talk, and she
Okay.
talks about what you practice grows.
Okay.
So this is one of the things that I would urge you to consider whenever
Okay.
you're feeling feisty.
Because I'm really calm, but there's a feisty part of me that's real feisty.
Yeah. So and that's a beautiful.
And when I
thing to
get
have,
worked
right?
up, it gets hard. Like I don't, and it's protected me a lot of the time. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's why I
because like
said.
people won't mess. Like I will, and then it's like another side of me. They're like, whoa, it's crazy, bitch. So,
But at the same time, like this is one of the practices I
Yeah.
tell people is always start with the small stuff first.
Okay.
When you're trying to make an emotional change and you're trying to rewrite the way that you respond emotionally to situations,
yeah.
start with the small stuff. Like in the case of frustration or anger, like tell me something that is a minor nuisance in your life that causes you anger.
It's irritating people.
Okay. So a lot of people say traffic, things like that, like, or and you just sort of play with that. So irritating people, you're just like, I don't know what that person's background is. I have no idea what their day was like. I have no idea if maybe they have a miserable person that they're living with. Like,
Yeah.
If they're being irritable, that's their choice. Because when you take that
Yeah, I try, but and that's what I talk to my girlfriends, and I'm like, I'll be like, happy people don't act that way, or hurt people, but they still get under my skin.
Absolutely.
I've even talked about this before on the two other podcasts, but how I'm sensitive to like, I don't like bullying online. I don't like online hate. Like I get it, but I'm sensitive to it. And I'm kind of like that too with people. It's like I want to like understand. Like I do, they're being mean or they're whatever, and that they have a problem. But I sometimes get really like still like they need to be told.
Yeah.
It needs to be addressed. I need to handle this.
And that's the concept of boundary setting.
Yeah.
Right. So there's nothing wrong with telling people what you feel.
Oh,
just so long as you
I
do
will.
It. Yeah, and just do it from a place that doesn't disturb your peace. Because that's the whole thing. What I've learned about myself is that that piece, that's me loving me, because my physiology is not getting disturbed by anybody out there.
Yeah, I do. I don't always do that, but I do try to be mindful of that, and that I want to be peaceful, and that people, and that a lot of times too, if people are not being nice or hateful, they want to see you step out of character, and they want to see you get, and like that's gonna just make them happy.
So I talk about nervous system acclimation a lot. So I feel like we all have a set point that we exist in neurologically.
Okay.
We get around certain people and sometimes we get this sense of agitation.
Yeah, why is that?
Because we're acclimating to them, nervous system wise. Our unconscious is feeding off
Yeah, because there's some people like I feel like happy around, and then other people that make you tense.
Yeah, some people drain you.
Yeah.
Like energy vampires, right? That's what I call them.
Yeah.
It's like you get around them and you just kind of feel uneasy, you sense of discomfort. It kind of either tells you, I've got to have a conversation with this person, or I just don't need to be around them anymore.
Okay.
That's one of the things I did after my recovery was I've got to pick the people around me. They've got to be people that I want to be around. I've got a half a life to live. The last thing I want to do is live it with people that are miserable.
Right.
Because misery
what if we're the bad vibe?
Huh?
What if we're the bad vibe?
Then if you're the bad vibe, then maybe you got to look into. Okay,
but how do you know?
Settle down. I've got to get some rest.
Yeah.
If you've got people like Izzy in your life. That's a beautiful grounder, right?
Izzy tells me you're the problem.
Well, you've got to be.
She doesn't.
She doesn't say that. But you've got to have people in your life that are going to tell you the truth.
She kind of does.
And ground you, and that's it.
She tries to ground me. No, she's such a huge blessing. I don't know what I would do without her. Truly. Look, it is really good to work, and to have like friends, family, and to have a colleague like that is really amazing.
Yeah, that they can balance you out.
Yeah, because I'm not easy to deal with.
So the things you say about yourself sometimes impact the way that you feel about yourself. So I would just say, I don't know. I've met you. I think you're a pretty good person.
Oh, well, thank you. It's like, no, I do. I think I believe that I come from a place that my desire and my intention is I want to be kind and I want to be loving. And then I don't always do that and I get frustrated.
Sure.
But
sure.
I do come from a place that I do want to be nice and kind to people. Yeah. Oh, that was sweet, Izzy.
Lovely said.
Yeah.
Well said.
So just to wrap this up, if people are interested in helping their brains and getting, for the business people and the laymen that are maybe kind of feeling overwhelmed, I think that you'd be a great resource to help them, calm down and basically get how you had some troubles and now you're able to live a healthy, mindful way. And then also athletes, I know that you're saying ballerinas, basketball, golfers, to help them with their game.
And mainly emotional regulation.
And their emotional regulation. Yeah. How would they reach out to you, or what is the process of becoming one of your, do you call it client? Because I know you're a coach. Okay, one of your clients. Yeah. How would they reach out to you?
So they can find me on www.oneqhp.com, which is my website.
Okay. Do you have a thing on the website that they can?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just reach out on the website.
The easiest way. Yeah, it would be through the website.
Okay, so if you're
I did want to say something.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Plug whatever.
You had mentioned how people can look at this and say, I can do it myself. So it's very classic to hear the DIY approach to health, these strategies. But the mind is the part that I
don't
found.
Think that.
I know.
Yeah,
you
okay. I'm like, I don't. I think
I
that you need help and that we're not an island.
For your listeners.
Yes, for sure.
Is that the resistance point comes with the mind, which is why, again, so people, how many New Year's resolutions get started on January 1st, and by, I think, mid-February, 80 to 85% are already done. It's because it's hard to adopt habits. It's not easy. You need someone there to constantly, because motivation fades, and if you don't have a passion for it, and you don't have something like you've hit rock bottom, you need somebody there to remind you, hey, you got to keep going. We need consistency. And so coaching, I think, is going to continue to expand as the years to come, because one of the things that I did want to talk about today was, we've got a healthcare crisis going on.
Yeah, let's talk about that. This is interesting. Yeah, we've got a big healthcare crisis.
Like we've got a bunch of doctors, baby boomer doctors that are about to retire. We've got less people going to medical school. We've got a deficit.
Kids go to medical school. Yeah. You got a job.
Because we're not going to have anybody to take care of us.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's time for us to take health into our own hands.
Okay.
Which is why I think people need coaching, because
Yeah,
they're going to need guidance.
Yeah, because from my perspective, it's a huge industry, the healthcare industry. And it's an industry where, for the most part, you profit from people being sick. People being sick, or, that's a lot of it.
Yeah. And the majority of
and the drugs. So it's like people being sick, ICD-10 codes, big pharma, and it's all dictated. And you can't get medication unless you have a physical ailment. And that's why a little bit I personally work outside the box. I do everything with compound pharmacies, myself and the medical director. So I prescribe things that I believe are going to be beneficial to healthy people. So you can come and see me, and there's different peptides and vitamins and things that I personally prescribe that I think that will enhance your physical being and secondarily enhance your mental well-being. And I'm not dictated by big pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not dictated by insurance companies, so that is something that
you're providing a great service.
Oh,
just
you
because
pay me. No.
you're taking people that I
Yeah.
mean, testosterone's been dropping, I think, since the 50s and 60s by 1% per year, and so men really need this now to get themselves to a place
for
of
sure.
stability.
And I kind of facetiously said if you pay me, because I do offer tons of free advice, which is get muscles on you, don't do drugs and alcohol, and also make sure that you do water fasting. So those are just things that I always say for free. But yeah, the testosterone. So I do for our business is we do testosterone replacement therapy, and it's really changing men's lives for the better. And I think that it's helping. I mean, when I did my continuing education, the gentleman that did it, he said, like, it's saving lives. Like, men are suicidal at testosterone. And I think that maybe it is. I mean, because it's getting them to feel better and then do those other steps. But the testosterone replacement, I don't do replacement for women right now. I'm never going to do women's hormone replacement. But there are other people that do. But for men, I think that it's a huge game changer.
Yeah.
I always tell people
People have this misnomer that testosterone's like the agitating, rage-causing hormone, when actually, if you stay within the therapeutic window, it's actually peaceful.
Yeah, well,
calming.
we do a little.
It makes men feel like men.
Yeah, so we do super therapeutic. We will go a little bit above, but as long as they're actually working out and sleeping, then it's really healthy. And then also too, I think with the rage part of testosterone, it's people that are like already possibly predispositioned. So then those people you have to, be a little bit careful. But the testosterone, I mean, it's so positive. And then it actually helps you too with physical strength, because you actually can get physically stronger with testosterone. And then if you're physically stronger, then you're going to get bigger muscles.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then there's all of these things which with studies with longevity, that the more muscle mass you have also really helps with longevity.
Stability.
Yeah, because these old
Less
people,
falls.
they're always saying, oh, yeah, brittle bones. No, it's because these old people, they fall and they can't brace their fall. And if you have enough muscle, so that's what I always tell, because people are like, I don't really like the gym, which I don't blame them. I'm not a huge gym person either, but I say, like, you got to do Pilates, yoga, at least calisthenics, something, because otherwise you're going to be old and you're going to fall, and you're not going to be able to break your fall, and you're going to break your bones.
Yeah, absolutely. And so back to the whole topic with healthcare, which is why I think we both are going to have great businesses in the future.
Yes.
It's just because I think people are going to get tired of sick care, right? Because that's
for
what
sure.
we're trained to do, is take care of sick people. We don't ever teach people how to be healthy.
No, exactly. And that's where, at work, in my business and your business, it's like trying to really help people. And I think we both do coaching, but just try to make sure that they are themselves making changes to be healthy.
Absolutely.
And I know in my experience with patients, we look at blood work, right? So I've just noticed time and time again. And I also am a proponent for the GLP-1 peptides, although there are some controversies going on with big pharma and compound pharmacies. But the GLP-1 peptides are really amazing, especially when you do microdosing. And I've noticed again and again, when patients come in and they're overweight and then they get in physical shape, they can get off a lot often these medications, and blood work looks spectacular.
Yeah.
Like,
what's crazy is that the human body is so resilient.
Yeah.
The sicker you are, the less it takes to get back to healthy. When you're really healthy, it's hard to lose the last 5 pounds.
Yes.
Right? Because the body's, it's made to be resilient. It's made to recover from disastrous conditions. That's just how we evolved.
Yes.
And so I remember doing the numbers on this, and it was crazy, because if just 10% of the population decided to adopt healthy habits,
Yes.
we would have a reduction in healthcare costs for the country of anywhere between 150 million and 300 million per year. 150 billion to 300 billion per year. And just to put that into perspective, so Doge, the Department of, what is it?
Justice?
No. The Doge is the new company with Elon Musk and all this stuff.
Oh,
So
okay.
they've cut government costs.
Okay.
Right? The Department of Government Efficiency, they just saved $170 billion. And they went through, I don't know, maybe almost a 6-month process to discover that amount of money.
Okay.
So
And how do they do that?
150, well, they searched through all the government stuff to figure it all out.
Okay.
It was a big deal. Yeah, a bunch
Okay,
of government
wasted,
waste.
okay.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is 10% of the population adopts healthy lifestyle. You've got 150 to 300 billion per year. Like, just imagine if 30% of the population did it. That's $1 trillion per year that we would be saving in healthcare costs. We'd cut our national deficit in 37 years.
So
That's
why?
how dramatic this is. If people would just understand what they have to do, it's not that hard. But they might need a little help along the way.
Yeah. And do you think it's just like our culture?
I think we've again,
Because I always think for myself, my mother came over as a Swedish exchange student, and I have dual citizenship. And I think that I've always kind of thought with health and some of it, because I spent my summers in Sweden, had my mother being Swedish, that the culture of Sweden is a little bit like healthier
Yeah.
than American culture. Not talking about politically as far as social, but just like the actual, just talking about physical
Yeah.
and what we're eating. And that was kind of ingrained in me, and that a lot, and that it might just be a little bit like culture that,
100%.
and it's hard. That's kind of hard to change.
We take for granted the abundance we live in
Okay.
because we have everything available to us. And so I think that it's the abundance that's become the problem, is that we have so much, but we complain so much about what we have rather than just be appreciative of all the gifts that we get here in this country. But I do believe that it's the abundance. It's us. It's the foods that we're eating. It's the types of processed foods that we're eating that's really got us in this pickle of obesity.
Yeah. So when you're saying, I'm assuming when you're saying to take our health into our own hands, one of the big thing is getting the weight under control, right?
Yeah, because obesity rates in the 50s was like 10 to 13% of the population. Now it's like 47 to near 50%.
Yeah. No, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know that I'm an advocate of, that I just know that the more obese you are, the more risk that you're at.
And it's not, it's not criticizing somebody for being heavy. It's just the idea that you don't realize the long-term
Well, it's not criticized, but
implications.
it's just the longevity. You're not
Yes.
you're not going to be able to live as long of a life, and it's going to be harder.
It's gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's going to be more exactly.
Yeah, having done chronic, because that's what I did, chronic pain management for 25 years.
Okay.
So I got to see the tail end of people not
Yes.
taking care of themselves, which is why I'm such a proponent of people taking care of themselves now. Because I see what the end point is, and it's not fun for anybody. I mean, the average patient will have anywhere between 10 and 20 medicines to take per day. They're not mobile.
That's
It's
awful.
a terrible way to live, like at the end of your life. Like,
Yeah,
it's a terrible way to go.
that sounds really awful.
Where if you push through, you have
And when you
healthy
saw
habits.
these people at the end of life living like that are 10 to 20 pills a day, not mobile, how old were they and what were their diagnoses?
So we're talking like chronic pain management, the average patient's probably in their 50s.
Oh, God.
So it's anywhere between early 40s to 60s, 70s, but the average is about 50.
Okay.
And so it's again, you've
And
got,
what do they usually have the chronic pain from?
normally it's neck and lower back pain are the primary,
Okay.
and those are totally reversible
Okay. And how are they reversible?
with movement. Like I would
Okay.
tell you, if you just get pattern movement, like I've got a really good friend.
So
named-
instead of taking all these pills, move.
Yeah, you
So
just
there's
gotta move.
movement. Yeah.
And I mean, it's as simple as just getting out from going for a walk. For somebody that's sedentary, just go for a walk. Go as far as you can. And if walking is your joints are not healthy enough for walking, then get into aquatic therapy. But any kind of movement, just get your muscles contracting. Because
Okay.
as your muscles contract, and everything creates stability, and so now you'll be able to tolerate land exercise.
And why do you think that we don't talk as much about walking and things? Do you think, this is my thought, it's because all the universities, there's no money, and if we do all these studies on the benefits of walking. But there's a lot of money if Big Pharma is pushing a pill.
Of course.
So
Of course.
that's
And
my philosophy, my rudimentary.
And this is probably
what-
an entirely different podcast.
Okay.
But what I would say is, I think the reason too is that humans think very much on everything's got to be. I'm trying to think all or nothing.
Okay.
Everything's all or nothing. Like, oh, I've got to exercise, and so that means I've got to get in the gym and I've got to push myself, because that's what they think they have to do, when in essence it's a gradual progression that's best.
Yes.
Because the body adapts, the fascial system adapts based on load. So if you load it too much, then you're sore and then you don't want to move. And that's what tends to happen to a lot of people that go to the gym.
Exactly. And I always tell my patients, and like my parents are about to be 72 and they go on walks a lot together. And I tell my patients, part of the reason I've tried to get a little bit more into yoga and more recently Pilates, I was doing floor Pilates for a while, but now I've just recently got into the reformer, is because it's something that I can see myself doing when I'm 90.
Yes.
And I can't see myself being in a gym necessarily when I'm 90. I can see myself doing beach walks till when I'm 90.
Sure.
So I'm trying to, in my 40s, adapt lifestyle things that I can do for the rest of my life.
Right.
And that's what I try to encourage my patients, is because it might not be Pilates or yoga, it might not be beach walks, but what do you enjoy for physical activity? Some of it is racquetball. Some people love the gym, but what can you imagine doing when you're 80 or 90? Because if you can't imagine doing it when you're 80 and 90, let's try to find that an activity that you could imagine, because you're going to, for you to feel healthy when you're 80 and 90, you're going to have to be doing some sort of physical activity.
Absolutely.
So let's figure out now. So you can do, all of it, but make sure we're at least doing some physical activity. So for example, I love water skiing. I might not be able to when I'm 80 and 90, but
Sure.
I'm still going to. But so I try to tell people, do what you think is fun, but make sure that you're also having routine of things that you can do when you're of old age, because if you can get that as a routine daily lifestyle, then you'll continue it.
Sure. Yeah,
So
I agree with that 100%.
All right. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you or that you want to share?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll make sure that we post like your website on for people that are watching, they can see, but repeat the website one more time, please.
So www.1qhp.com.
Okay. www.1, the number one?
No, the
ONE
yeah,
Q
QHP.
QHP.com. All right, awesome. All right, well, thank you all for watching us, and go ahead and hit up Alex. And if you are an athlete, he's going to help you. And if you're just a stressed out professional, feeling like you're at your wits' end, about to go crazy, he can help you make sure that you get your mind feeling all better.